Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are. We've got a smiling Steve Dickson ready to have another session with us. And I say smiling because of something that we were talking about before we went on air. Table manners. Anyhow, we won't cover that today, Stephen, but lovely to have you. And I understand, again, I mean, we're very, very rarely together. Can you just bear with me 1 second? I've just had somebody come in with a beautiful cup of tea. It's my darling wife. Thank you so much. And we're celebrating our 38th year of wedding. Anyhow, that's
cheers to that, Chris. I do hope that's a cup of Barry's that Kathy has brought you there.
Stronger, my friend, stronger.
It's not a Barry's.
It's not a Barry's. Very difficult to get hold of, my friend. Yeah, but Yorkshire does.
You mean you've drunk all my Barry's already?
Yeah, of course I have.
Oh, good Lord.
Of course I have.
Well, no matter where in the world I am, I'm never far from a Yorkshire Gold or a Barry's brew.
Yeah.
And it's despite me being in the Middle East now, I brought a box of Barry's with me. So Lipton's just doesn't quite cut it, does it?
There you go, mate. There you go. So there you go. A little bit of free advertising for Barry's and for Yorkshire's best. Now, you're on a little Middle East tour, Steve, so fair play to you. But what I was just saying is we are so seldom now, even in these times, in the same country.
Well, I think that's probably, Chris, indicative of how things are now, moving on, and how we're progressing out of this pandemic. And it's a good sign to you've been traveling recently. I've been traveling. I'm traveling now. For us, we were in the UK together for an awfully long time, together, much longer than we either would have personally wanted, or possibly our families would have wanted. I was without my family, and you were with your family, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's fair to say that travel is becoming much easier now. Whilst there are still some hurdles and hoops to jump and go through, it's much easier to get on an aircraft now and avail of a lot of very good, particularly in the GCC here, avail of great digital technology that allows travel to be opening up quite free, not only for residents or for visa holders, but also for non-visa holders like myself and those that want to conduct business in and around the Middle East, which I think is great news.
Yeah, no, it is. And following the theme now about people traveling more, obviously it's good. This last week we had the GHI, which was great for the industry, people getting together, a lot of activity. And we also had the Air Cargo News Awards on Thursday evening. So that was nice. And I met a few people that I previously worked with, and also some colleagues. I wasn't at the event itself, but towards the beginning, to see 200 plus people out on the lawns talking and, getting ready for what was going to be a lovely evening was really nice to see. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I think, I didn't get much news. The Air Cargo world is mostly your domain, Chris, and you do a far better job of blagging it in that sphere than I do. But my network was telling me that the GHI, conference was reasonably well attended. And a few people that were there were saying it was good. It was good to kind of, finally kind of meet people again after so long of these events not happening. And we all know that whilst there's a formal aspect of, whether it's the IGHC meetings or it's GHI meetings or it's Roots conferences or whatever the event might be, yes, whilst what happens on the conference floor is helpful or on the exhibition floor is great, there's most of the work tends to be done after 5 p.m. In the beer halls or in the bars and restaurants that sort of surround the events. And that's where I think people were very happy to get to Denmark this week, to Copenhagen, and spend some time together, formally or otherwise, and I suspect more informally this time than not. So I think it's great to see the industry coming back together, and there was some good content coming out of GHI this week as well. So that's great to see. No,
I agree with you, Steve. And just before we get back to GHI with one of the messages that was endorsed by KPMG. But on the awards themselves at the Air Cargo News, some of the friends of the show and people that have been on, it was nice to see Etihad picked up the Air Cargo Farmer Award, and also Ethiopian Best Cargo Airline in Africa, which not really a surprise, but nice to see them getting acknowledged again. The Americas was United Cargo. Asia was Saudia. So Teddy, well done, my friend. Teddy and all the boys Really pleased for you. And then airline Europe was Cargo Lux, and then best cargo airline Middle East, Emirates, and best freighter operator, as we know, I'm sure the chief and Guillaume will be happy, Qatar Airways. Cargo airline of the year was American, and that was I think how many times they picked it up now. They picked it up an awful lot of times. And then the cargo hub of the year was Brussels. Charter broker of the year was Chapman, which was good. The ground handler of the year was Donata. And the GSA of the year was Fly Us, which is good. So well done to Fly Us. That's brilliant. And the Innovation Award for digital category, which was sponsored by Sal, was Air Cargo Belgium. And then the Innovation Award was Dronamics. So it was good. But it was lovely to see it. And, it's nice to see so many people so pleased to see each other again and chatting and catching up. And a couple of old stars, but at opposite ends of Grattan's catalogue. So you got the still young dynamic man, and then you got the ambassadorial role of Des Vertannes, and the young one I'm talking about is Martin Drew. But they both look, very distinguished at opposite ends of the scale there. But lovely to see them. Now back to.
That's sure. Des will that'll resonate with him, I'm sure.
No, he's golden oldie. He's a classic. Do you know what I mean? Whereas
there's a few golden oldies around, Chris, but we can all learn and share from their wisdom and their experiences over the years. And there's no better place to do it than a bar with a pint of Guinness or several over the course of an evening, which is what we've all missed, I think. And that's where a lot of these anecdotes and stories are shared, which a lot of the younger crowd will sadly miss out on now as we lose some of these great golden oldies, as you coined, from the industry.
Yeah. Well, they'll all get a chance now with the World Cargo Symposium being shifted from Istanbul to Dublin. So next month, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people, Well,
that's a shame. Just as Turkey comes off the red list, of course.
Yeah, I know. They'll be gutted with that, but there'll be a lot of people pleased to be going to Dublin. Now, Steve, GHI, KPMG, they were talking about what does bring back better actually mean, and we've been coining many phrases on the podcast and the weekend show, which is nice, and it's nice to pigeonhole what's going on, but it's even more important now to make sure something happens from it, because the terms have been there too long now without actually seeing, real facts and actions and something solid and something critical for the industry. So, bring back better. What do you think? What does it mean?
Well, I think what it means is let's not lose this opportunity, to fix some of the areas of our business that have been troubling us for a very long time. Aspects in relation to digitalization, for example. Moving to e-airway bills and the like, or paperless cockpits, or paperless ground handling environment. I think that's one big aspect that needs to be tackled. The other, I think, Chris, is around audits and what the purpose of audits, and actually reshaping the purpose of audits and why they exist, and for what an audit is there to achieve. It's not there to achieve a tick box exercise. A certification audit is not there just to allow you to put a lovely piece of paper on the wall behind you. They're there for meaningful reasons, which is to ensure continuous improvement and continuous management focus on the areas that need improvement, and to draw attention to those areas. But also, more the way I looked at it always is to ensure that the management give you the resources and the tools to help fix those areas. And that's, I think. And the third thing for me really is around training, Chris, which is an extension of the second. Really, is actually, let's use this to ensure we've got, as this exodus of people exits the business or has exited the business, and we're never going to see their like again, sadly. Some would say less so, but I think sadly, it's important that we ensure that the new generation, the younger generations, are competent and are qualified and are capable of doing the job, and that training is used in a much more meaningful way. So I think it's about adding meaning and purpose back into the vision and the objectives of the goals of the firms. And there's no time like the present where the volumes are still suppressed. I think they'll be picking up again after some announcements in the UK yesterday. But finally, but whilst we've got this once in a lifetime or once in a career opportunity, we need to make sure that we simplify our business, we start to really tackle the issues that have been a thorn in our side for many a year. And I don't really see that is being done, holistically or across the board. I think what we've been really focusing on is trying to reshape or revise some of previous strategies to suit the purpose of the COVID times, rather than actually kind of a root and branch review from top to bottom and vice versa. And shaking the tree and getting rid of all the crap and the crud that we just had not been able to do for a long time.
Yeah, no, I agree, Steve, and I think the duty of care has to be there now to make sure that companies that want to bring back better and don't waste the crisis and really clean up and modify, upgrade, simplify, take away the complexity, etc. But a duty of care to actually train the people who are going to be the leaders of the future, and there's going to be a lot of them having to step up, but train them so that they don't get burnt out or they don't get overused or underused, and that they've got the capability and the self-confidence to be fully engaged, to make sure that when they lead their colleagues, they're leading them from a positive standpoint. Yeah. And I think that is so important now, because not to be critical of the training sector, but if you look at a training model, it's very professional. The content is great, the manual, the booklets, everything that you get is fantastic. The amount of time, you think, right, that's a really good. The trainer's qualified, the organizations are qualified. But when you actually look at what you remember after the training, and I say remember because I'm talking about a memory test that's normally done after it instead of a retention of knowledge exercise, but you forget so much so quickly over that period of time. So one would question then, are we doing the training correctly? And are we really focusing on the real critical points that are going to make a difference to the business? And I think if we did, more senior managers who don't really take kindly to their people being released from the workplace and having to spend, a lot of time out of the workplace and at cost, if they don't see a real time return on investment, they're not going to support it. And every time something goes wrong in our business, marketing, training, all dropped, all reduced, and then everybody clamours afterwards, where are they? We don't have qualified people, we don't have enough people, etc. It's going to be a big shame.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, these are some of the issues that I talked to, and I think that there is this once in a clear opportunity for those at the top of the business, Chris, those that control the purse strings, those that are setting the direction, of firms. They are now responsible to their people and to their customers. Let's not forget their customers also for ensuring that some of those aspects that you just mentioned there are fixed and become kind of down pat in the sort of the modus operandi going forward. So I think really it's about as we see sort of global fleets changing, the global fleet mix changing. We see, some airports have come back at full strength, others are still sort of languishing there. Some airports might never come back to the same levels they were before, as airlines choose to consolidate their assets in fewer bases to build, broader economies of scale. These are all things that need to matter and be front of center of a business's strategy when it comes to attracting those people back into their customer, back into their fold as employees. I was seeing last week, it's great to see that, or earlier this week rather, especially being here in the Middle East now, it's great to see that Emirates, for example, are now, recruiting again. I think they said they don't have 500 pilots or and 2,000 cabin crew or something of that ilk. Don't quote me, but there was some reasonably big numbers, and also bringing back ground staff back into I guess into ECAS or Donata. But that's to support their recovery at the hub. But I can't help but be troubled by the fact that they didn't also in that statement say that those that were asked to leave, accepting that there are performance records and so on that have to be managed and so on and so forth. So you might want to get rid of some of your bad eggs during this process. But if you were a good leaver and you're left with through no fault of your own, that they should be absolutely at the top of the list to come back into the business.
Yeah.
I didn't see that, and from what I could see, they were opening up opportunities to everybody once more. And I can't just help. I can't help but think that the phrase that we used before was, "You live by the sword and you die by the sword," and therefore, if one is prepared to use the sword, in difficult times, then be prepared to have it used against you. And I can't help but think Emirates missed a trick there. Now that may not be the case, and maybe some of our listeners will know more about it than I. But certainly from my understanding or from my expectation. I would have expected Emirates to be front and center when it comes to kind of leading the pack and ensuring that those that sort of fell on their sword for the company would have a chance to recover there. And I think that's important. It sets only not the sort of the moral obligation, but just it's the just thing to do, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree, Steve. I agree, but it's so important, and again, if you don't train in the correct way now moving forward, you're going to have limited succession capabilities, and if you have limited succession capabilities, you're going to have greater risk of not satisfying the customer. And across so many industries now, no matter where it is, you're seeing shortages, you're seeing shortage of skills, you're seeing people being asked, please be patient, we don't have enough staff. No matter where it is, every single one of these calls you make, the message is now we are having so many calls and we've got staff problems. It's everywhere, Steve, and it's got to change as well. So bring back better can't continue to be something that's hung on the hook waiting for a sunny day or a rainy day. It's got to be done quickly. Now the other term that we've used and that links in nicely with bring back better is making it matter. Now, and I'm sure you're going to come to some of the points maybe from the KPMG statement that was made at GHI, but this making it matter. How do you get people to be engaged to a level where they are showing a really, really dynamic or a really, really responsible awareness of their accountability in those roles? Because everything has changed so much now that there's so much negativity in press. There's so much, you've got to be aware of this and people's mental health and people's equality and the environment. And there's so many things now that people are getting, so caught up on. Whereas the one thing is, no matter how old you are on this world, it's never going to be long enough to spend on it. So enjoy what you do.
I don't know.
Enjoy what you do. No, but seriously, Steve, enjoy what you do. And do it as well as you possibly can, which gives you a better chance to continue to get reward from it, which is a nice positive cycle. So some of the things that I'm seeing now, and some of my friends and my daughter's friends, and they're talking about some of the jobs they're getting now. And in one way, I'm thinking, my God, I wish I'd have had some of that. But equally, some of it is a bit, I'm thinking, tongue in cheek. How on earth are they doing these things, or why? So there's things like, wellness obviously is important, and companies that spend a lot of time considering the wellness of their employees, I take my hat off to them. Fantastic. But, seeing things like, Friday lunchtimes, we stop. There are even some that are having Prosecco updates to make people more at ease to talk openly about strategy and commercial opportunities, etc. You've got, yoga at work, and all these things are great. But I just think there's not enough people talking about what has to be done at work. Minimum expectations, purpose, all those things. I don't think that people are now being almost not military or disciplined, but before you can do all the nice things, you have to get to a certain level.
Well, I think you mentioned purpose there. I think clarity of purpose is important. Why am I here? What am I doing? And for what purpose? Then sort of an employer will say, well, actually, you're here to do a job and you're here to do what I tell you. So, well, yeah, kind of the employee might then say, well, that's all very well. I'll just, buckle down or knuckle down rather, and just get on with the job. Those days are gone. Actually, now employees are saying, well, what's in it for me? Yeah. What do you have to offer that differentiates you as an employer? So airline A or ground handler A versus ground handler B or airline B. When I'm being paid minimum wage, which let's be frank, I mean, that's generally the terms are there or thereabouts, between ground handlers specifically. You get minimum wage whether it's ground handler A or it's ground handler B. However, if ground handler A is offering wellness programs that include access to gyms, they're offering allowance in terms of continual training or ongoing learning and development opportunities, then the days of an employee just saying, well, what's closest to my home? Which cargo shed is closer to my house? Is it the one at the southern perimeter or the one on the northern perimeter? Which one can I get to? I think employees that are being a bit more sophisticated now, Chris, when it comes to arguing the toss or balancing
I agree.
the sort of what's in it for them.
Yeah.
Now, if that decision changes from an employee's perspective when one's paying 12 quid an hour versus one paying 10 quid an hour, let's be frank. And you and I worked in environments, Chris, where people will move companies for 10 or 20 pence an hour difference. I mean, that's the reality of sometimes what we're competing for. So I think things have got to change in that regard. So companies will, clearly under serious financial strain and pressures. I was reading the other day an article that said that airlines, global airline debt is equivalent to $45 US
every
per person, every human being on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, God, that was just astounding.
Yes.
So the industry will be suffering for a long time to come, Chris. But they don't have to be things of great monetary value and excesses. I remember when I joined the Qantas Group in 2009, and my first time fresh off the boat, as they say in Australia, and I arrived in Australia, and we had all sorts of programs that Qantas Group were offering. And that included annual health checks. It included regular kind of well-being checks. Every Friday night, we were downstairs in the bar outside the office, standing outside having drinks. There were monthly or quarterly barbecues. I mean, this goes back 10 years. I remember even still before that, at EasyJet in the car park in Luton Airport, in an old tin shed back in 2003 and 4. We were having Friday night barbecues, all sponsored by the company. Okay, cost them a couple hundred quid every Friday night, depending on who was there and how much they drank. But sausage rolls and hot dogs and burgers and beer. I mean, that stuff's been around for a long time. So I don't think that these employers that have done so, have probably stolen edge. But actually, it wasn't about what they did. It was about the psychology of the organization that they created and the chemistry or the culture they built in the organization, which is one of being much more open, one of much more, you could walk up to the CEO's desk and have a conversation. You could talk to anybody in the organization. I guess those things change as organizations get bigger, but it wasn't about the what. It was about the why, and the how could vary across different organizations or different branches of the business. So I think the employees now will be saying, actually, okay, Prosecco Friday. Okay, it doesn't really mean much to me. I don't drink Prosecco, but so be it. What that means is that you've got much more access and much more freedom to engage with the management team and share some of your ideas. That'll work for some people. Getting a gym membership at David Lloyd's will work for other people. Yeah. So there are different tools in the toolkit that I think employers need to remember. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
So I remember staff travel being a big draw for airlines to use as but when there's hardly any flying, or when you've got 95% load factor, staff travel is fucking useless. I mean, you can't get a seat, at least not in the cabin that you want to sit in, right? So, I mean, the value of staff travel, which is a big burden on the cost of the airline, by the way, from a taxation perspective and a commercial perspective, those things are problematic and expensive to run. So I think there's no one size fits all, Chris. I think what the organization has to do is find what's right in their environment. And some businesses do it really well, and others don't do it at all. There's got to be something in the middle where it's not burdening employers massively financially, but actually is meaningful to the employee groups that they're trying to serve.
Yeah, but it's just one of the many pillars now of bringing back better. The C-suite and the senior management, they're going to have to start thinking about how do they make sure that their good people stay with them. What's the DNA, the culture? How do they do things that brings that out in everybody so that engagement level that the customer witnesses is right up there, or that the standards, et cetera, is right up there. Now, I was talking to a group of youngsters, and I say youngsters, most people are young in comparison to where I am now, but I was speaking to a group of youngsters and I was saying to them, in your current jobs, are you expected to do anything more than your job? So all of them, to a person. Okay. They said, no, as long as we do our job, okay, we're all right. So I said, but are you not encouraged to carry on learning? You've got so many years ahead of you. Why would you waste the opportunity not to learn more and become more valuable as your own personal asset? And they were saying, well, we don't have that. We'd have to go on to Open University, or we'd have to go to night classes, and we do things, et cetera, et cetera. Now, organizations have got the opportunity now, because obviously costs are so important, but they've got the opportunity now, I think, to create a different type of employee, and an employee who's so multi-skilled, which is one of those utility tools that you have in your toolbox, as opposed to a straightforward Phillips screwdriver or a normal screwdriver or a, I just think now is the time where people can actually start putting themselves forward to be more value to an organization, and especially when we're not sure what's going to happen in the future. Is there going to be more contraction? Is there going to be more expansion? Is it going to be fast? Is it going to be slow? What can I do in downtime? Is there downtime because of shifts or because of services? A totally different approach can be made, I think.
Yeah, I think it has to. I mean, it's not an option. I don't believe. Particularly where, some of the activity that goes on in our industry, let's be honest, Chris, is pretty transactional. Whether it's between supplier and customer, or it's between employer and employee, or it's between forwarder and agents, or shipper and or consignee. They're very transactional arrangements. But I think what matters now is saying, actually, creating meaningful relationships of lasting value is probably worth more post-pandemic than it was before. Airlines would move ground handlers to save a tenner a term every 3 years, in the same way that employees would move between various employers. So I think what we've got to do is look at it more holistically, but that has to really be encouraged from the ones that are paying the fees, and that's the passenger, that's the customer, or it's the shipper, right? So, customers are expecting different things in restaurants now versus pre-pandemic, in the same way that airline customers are expecting different things from airports to ground handlers, or from cargo handlers, etc. So I think that has to start at the customer level, and we're seeing that already. Certainly in our industry, we've seen airlines now looking for sort of better, more strategic relationships that are built on one of integrity, that are built on a foundation of trust. And are go much further to solve some of those problems that you mentioned. So I absolutely think it's going to start from a customer perspective for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and that pressure needs to be put on that, because the expectations are changing now all the time, and
That's right, exactly.
And it's good, and it's good that they are. What I also think needs to be simplified and brought down to a nice common denominator level is, at the end of the day, Steve, most things we do in life, or most things we purchase, it's either volume or value.
Yes.
And if you go value, you expect to pay more, and you expect to get more for it. Well, whereas one of the problems we've got now, we've got so many of the industries recovering, they're still expecting to charge value, but they're not giving those value services. So people are complaining.
Exactly.
And it's being diluted. And that's very dangerous. So if we don't stop that, it's going to be very dangerous.
And also, I mean, we're looking at these problems now in supply chain, Chris. So, for example, with the with the lorry drivers, HGV drivers, who are now commanding exorbitant salaries, and good on them. I mean, I think there is a question of supply and demand, and if they're able to monetize, and benefit from that exceptional demand, that's then fair play to them. However, somebody else has to pay. It's not going to be the haulage companies that pay, or won't just be Tesco or Waitrose or whatever that pay. It'll be the consumer that pays. So we now have to accept, I think, as consumers as well, that because of some of these issues that have been caused, some will say because of Brexit, some will say because of pandemic, some will say just because of general pressures, but it's exactly the same in our industry, Chris.
Yeah.
Where we've lost people, or we've had to pay people more to retain good experiences, or we've had to give pay awards above inflation, the customer will pay. So I think what we have to realize is that, and we said this last year, the days of a £5 ticket, as I got recently on Ryanair from Palma to Stansted, which you were complaining about.
I remember.
That's far too cheap. You should have paid much more than a £5. Well, of course, I'm very happy to pay a £5, because I'd be equally happy to pay 20 quid or 40 quid.
That's what I mean, Steve. Exactly.
So now, will that go straight back into the skyrocket of Mr. O'Reilly and his shareholders? Yes, most certainly it probably will, and therefore there has to be some kind of balance, I guess, in terms of expectation management. It can't just be the case that we pay more and it goes to the shareholder. There has to be a kind of a a trickle down wealth creation within this setup as well.
Yeah. No, definitely, Steve. And when I was living in the States, I remember some of the lads that I got quite close to because we were playing sports and stuff. I remember seeing them when I was finishing shift one night, and they went over to the car park and they got out a different polo shirt, a different shirt, and then they go and do another shift. And I said, guys, how can you? Do you know what I mean? You're killing yourselves. But they were doing it because they needed the money and they had the opportunity. So I think there's another opportunity now, Steve, as well, for people to realise if you're able to get people who are fit, healthy and want to work, and you give them a more productive, shorter shift period, which has a greater output, you could allow them then to go and do a different type of work for maybe up to another 4 hours in another part of your business because they're multi-skilled, and it was also a different type of activity which wouldn't be putting so much fatigue on them.
Well, exactly, Chris, and I this is something again we spoke about last year, is about this sort of this changing these sort of this fixed mentality of that's my job, that's my function, into much more sort of utilitarian usage of people, so that they are multi-skilled. You give them additional training, they can work in different environments, they can move elsewhere within your business. So rather than looking outside, give them so I mean, I remember when I was in check-in at when I was in dispatch at Service Air in Edinburgh back in the late 90s, I used to do overtime in check-in, but I was a dispatcher. Now that was kind of not the done thing. People, if you worked in dispatch, you worked in dispatch. But I wanted overtime hours because I was young and hungry, and 17 years old. We all wanted overtime, right? Double bubble, as we used to call it.
That's it.
But that overtime only might have existed in another function. I went to work in baggage services, and I trained myself. Okay, it wouldn't be allowed now necessarily because I hadn't gone through the formal Cadeco check-in training or been signed off. But okay, there's a different era, let's say. But those opportunities should still be available to people. So if there are shifts available and you've got your own employees, rather give it to your employees than give it to agency workers, for example, that you call in upon. Or
yes.
And I remember we used to have all this thing called what was it called? Where one area of the business, the unions didn't like it if you were working on somebody else's area. Demarcation.
Yes.
So we had to have some level of demarcation between the business units, and you couldn't work in ramp if you were checking, etc., or vice versa. So that was the thing. But I remember doing extra shift in all those areas, and I think it's a good thing for all of our young people to consider. But it's got to be sponsored by the companies, Chris. It's got to be sponsored by the firms.
Yeah, no, but I agree. I had some of the best times ever when in Lufthansa when we went over and did that. At once, I mean, admittedly, it was because of a strike, but we went over and did our own baggage handling. And it makes you think differently about the company you're working for, and also how everything interlinks. And I think if you've got guys who do a really productive shift in the warehouse or on the ramp, then why would you not let them come in and do some admin work, to wind down after a shift and help out, but also to understand how part of the process that goes before what they do or after what they do is affected by what they actually do. And
exactly.
I think makes them understand the business more, opens up more opportunities, succession, etc. So I think
for sure,
bring back better and make it matter. People need to have a much broader, or not such a tunneled vision of it. Hopefully that'll happen. Now you're talking about things going well. Obviously this announcement with the go and no go, but also the Ryanair shares, nice surge there with their optimism with their numbers. So that's good to see.
It's great to see. Yeah, I think overall, the announcement this week was positive. I think we there are some still some people that might complain about the some of the red countries that were still remaining on the list afterwards. But I think overall industry saw it as positive. I think we saw it as I certainly saw it as positive. Recognition of vaccine programs outside of the European Union or the US, recognition of Malaysia, recognition of Qatar, recognition of Saudi Arabia. So all those places I know mean a lot of the expat workers, and it means that my family now are fully recognized with their jab. So I think that's good. We've seen some massive surge in bookings since that announcement was made, which is fabulous. But I still think there's some loose ends to tie up, Chris. The PCR tests are remaining still for another 4 weeks beyond until the end of the half term, which I think is just a nonsense, really. I think that needs to change and be fixed. So so there's some activity going on next to me.
Yes, and very nice to see, Stephen. There's me thinking that you did all your own work yourself, and now the truth be known, my friend.
Well, I remember on one podcast, because you remember seeing a feather duster being used extensively behind me. That was a good outtake for the posterity. But yeah, no, I think overall,
good that the young fella there is wearing his mask as well.
Oh, was he? Excellent.
Yeah.
That's good.
Wearing his mask. Yeah.
Great news.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. Now, you're also saying that some of the countries we've been talking about, and you mentioned earlier when we were chatting about Vietnam and about, people are now sort of setting a deadline, hoping that things will be better by then. But if they're not, they've got to get out and do something. Otherwise, that £45 or $45 per population person is going to start going up and up and up. And that's just you can't think that would happen.
Well, I think Vietnam has said basically from I think middle of January, 16th of January, where they will open come hell or high water.
Yeah.
And regardless of cases, regardless of vaccine rates, and I think they just got to the point now of saying, look, we are causing more long-term damage to our people, to the economy, to their livelihoods, to their mental health, to children, to family construct, by keeping our borders closed. So they've said we're opening come hell or high water. I guess I suspect that's with conditions, which is probably no bad thing. And just yesterday or the day before, I was reading that Indonesia is working to open up Bali, an island that I think is probably, I'd taken a guess, is 80 or 90% reliant on tourism. A place that my wife and our family go 3, 4, 5 times a year. It's a favored spot of ours. And the Balinese people are some of the most hospitable on this planet, and so it's devastating to see what's happened to Bali. So I think that is probably the right move, Chris. I think there's still some pockets of politics, and political hands being overplayed, rather than actually, ones of kind of a pragmatic approach. But look, we're going to have that for a little while yet. And it's still very disappointing to see that the US is still resolute in keeping its borders closed to European Union and UK residents. Essentially, if you've been in the European Union, you can't enter there 14 days. So that's so I think that's unfortunate. But now the EU is fighting back, and we will now see some closure. The EU being closed to the Yanks, which I think is no bad thing. Let's stick it up the Yanks.
Oh, right. Fair enough. Now, one of the things that we've spoken about, about with the passports, but also about whether or not people should or should not jab and job. So I know your opinion's very, 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 very clear. Okay, I know those. With those starry eyes. But Southwest Airlines now, as far as downright just basic incentivizing your people to be jabbed, and they're paying them now to be jabbed. So rather than some others who have been withdrawing funds or giving people a harder time, but at the end of the day, there was something I watched on the news yesterday. It was such a terrible thing. There was 2 members of the same family, both decided not to be jabbed, and both passed away. And the rest of their family, the first thing that they said, and also the doctors and the hospital staff, they said that whilst they were at their worst, they said, oh my goodness me, why didn't we just do it? Why didn't we take it? Is it too late to take it now? And there's no there's no sense in people, sitting back and thinking it may never happen to them. We need everybody to be jabbed up now. So I mean, I'm not for the compulsory vaccinations, Chris, as you know. We've spoken enough about that in the past. I do think the benefit of hindsight is a wonderful thing, I think we can learn from some of the stories that are now appearing, and hopefully those stories and the facts are enough to prompt people to get bloody vaccinated. I mean, that's
it doesn't need you or I or presidents or prime ministers or ministers of health or whatever to enforce it, nor does it need private sector to penalize people for not being vaccinated. But I think getting some of these facts out there, getting rid of some of this nonsense, these nonsense stories. I mean, this thing from Nicki Minaj in the week that I thought Professor Chris Whitty batted off beautifully along with the Boris Johnson. Just said, sorry, Nicki who? As if just,
she's got 20 odd million.
But Chris, that's completely irresponsible behavior. And then I saw the Trinidad health minister, having to waste time looking for evidence of these of this case, because it doesn't exist. And she should be utterly ashamed of herself. And of course, her followers and her faithful are all in support of her taking the piss out of this thing, which I just think is really utterly disgraceful. So I'm dead against all of that. That does not make me in favour of compulsory vaccinations, however.
Yeah, no, I know. But the problem is, Steve, it's the minority. The minority are still causing problems for the majority, and it's a shame because it shouldn't be allowed. Now, I'm wearing a T-shirt for Mervyn Walker again, because the last time I wore it, he sent me a message. So, Mervyn, this one's for you, my friend. And just before we finish now, Steve, next week, where are you next week? Are you back in the country, or are you abroad, or?
Well, I thought we were planning to meet up at some stage, Chris. I thought that was something we were trying to achieve. But let's watch this space.
Yes, Thursday.
Let's watch this space.
Yes. No, you're right. I'm looking forward to that, actually. Right. Listen, thanks very much. Enjoy where you are. Enjoy your tour. And obviously, I'll find out about it when I see you on Thursday. I'm looking forward to that. So
good stuff. Cheers, Chris.
Another week flies past, my friend. Take care of yourself. Good luck.
Up the dubs.
Yes. All right, mate. Take care.
Cheers, Chris.
Cheers.